Hello, everyone. Before we get started, since I'm 1 minute early, I think, and since we've heard so many great integrations, I just want to ask a question. Is there anybody in this room who is not familiar with the developers network? Good. Is there anybody who is shy and is still unfamiliar with the developers network? Okay. I'm just going to do this anyway. So it's really hard to find, but so Developers Network is, among other things, a place where you can tell us about these wonderful inventions. Okay, so we don't have to wait a year to hear about them, or guess, or mouth to ear kind of thing. There is a tech blog, and you can filter by product, and you can find out what everybody else theoretically is doing, should they be inclined to share. Now, you don't give up your GitHub repository, or wherever you put it, you still maintain the GitHub repository. You can have a README file there and everything. But you can just write, just a few paragraphs and tell us about what it does and where we can find it. And I think that would be a great way of disseminating and sharing the things that you develop. And you can go, find other things here. Second thing, which I want to bring up, which is not related to my talk, is in light of Adi's presentation this morning. Adi asked what kind of integrations you would like to see, and some people answered Alma. So if you want to do that, and you are still unaware of the tools that we already have for integrating Alma, please come talk to me. I'd be very interested in understanding what you want to do, and making sure that what we already provide can help you, and if it can't, well, we're missing. So talk to me, send me an email, anything, whatever's convenient for you. I'd love to hear. So I was going to start with a presentation, but in light of the number of people who said they are unfamiliar with IIIF, I thought I'd start with a very small demo. This is Mirador, and this is actually, to be exact, this is Oxford's Mirador. And what Mirador does is, what's a really nice tool for showing images. So, is there anybody who hasn't seen this? I mean, really? So everybody saw this. Everybody knows what IIIF is. Some people just don't know that it's called IIIF. Okay. Okay. So you can, right? This is you can select images, and theoretically they open up, and you can zoom into incredible resolution and see. And then there are these really cool features like annotations, where you can, I don't know if they've enabled it here, but if they enable it, then you can select an area, and you can put in text, and you can share this with other people. And right, and there's, sorry, turn this off. I think they turned it off. Anyway, and of course, manipulate and do whatever. So, and this is a really simple implementation. Some people have written their own implementations of Mirador and done really cool things with it. So that's, that's from a visual point, that's what it does. And it's based mostly on two APIs that were developed by the IIIF framework. One is called an image API, so that's basically how this client or any other compliant client communicates with an image server. And that means it requests either information or actual pixels from, right, a range of pixels from an image server. And the second API is called the presentation API, which is a JSON, it's called a manifest. It's a JSON document that provides all this stuff on the side here, all the metadata, and of course embeds all the relevant images and puts them all together. So in a nutshell, that's IIIF and a little bit more. And what I want to talk about is, now what I want to start talking about is what this has to do with Rosetta. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is last week there was the annual IIIF Conference in Vatican City, which I attended, and I will kind of embed my impressions of that conference into what I have to say, and the rest of my talk will be about how this is going to be implemented in Rosetta 5.3, which is to be released later this summer. I want to say, in short, why I think this is important, why I think IIIF is important. There is a tradition of suspicion towards the written word, or the commit of memory to writing or to visual. And this goes back as far as Socrates, right? In the Phaedrus, Socrates talks against students writing, taking notes. And this tradition is actually, or this sentiment is actually prevalent throughout Jewish tradition in most of the first millennium, where Talmudic scholarship was not written down. And even later on, when writing down became, more or less a fact, when printing came along, there was some reservation or objection to this. Some of it was based on the fact that monks would find themselves kind of out of a job, but also there was an objection that had to do with the fact that also had to do with the fact of the effect on memory. Since if you have only a few manuscripts, you'd have to read and remember what you read. The more copies you have means that the copies are more available, readily available, and you don't rely as much on your memory. And fast forward a few hundred years, and Walter Benjamin, in his monumental work of art in the age of technical reproducibility, he writes, even in the most perfect reproduction, one thing is lacking: the here and now of the work of art, its unique existence in a particular place. It is this unique existence and nothing else that bears the mark of the history to which the work has been subject. The whole sphere of authenticity eludes technological reproduction. And I think here too, he's talking about art, but I think this also, in a way, he wasn't very much concerned with text, certainly not with manuscripts, but I think this is true of text as well. And the final example I want to bring is from a book written by Carol Fink, who is a prominent 20th century historian, or Western history. And this book is a few months old. And Professor Fink writes, digitization has indeed made it possible to amass an impressive swath of resources from distant repositories, international and national, private and public, personal and group. But this swift and easy access may also create bars against understanding the material. By becoming desk scholars and avoiding the artist's expensive and not always productive voyages to the places of study, many historians are eliminating the crucial element of the context of their investigations, a context provided not only by consulting the records firsthand, but also through the indispensable interchanges with local scholars and archivists and through direct contact with the place itself. Moreover, up to now, this access to digitized primary and secondary materials has been restricted by a scholar's connection to an affluent, primarily Western academic institution, and has thereby widened the gap between the global North and South, impeding the quest to become a truly international discipline. So I think we can see that there's a line now 2,300 years old of kind of suspicion or changing, of course, with time, but of the ubiquitousness of resources, the idea that you can find them anywhere, that there's no more one resource, and this specific criticism about the fact that that scholars have this easier access and it's coming at the expense of something. I think this now changes with IIIF, not only IIIF, maybe also multispectral imaging. And what I mean is that scholars now not only have easier access, which gives them, of course, more time and efforts to use in other ways, but they have better access. Okay, so for the first time, a scholar can see, if we go back to, Mirador for a second, what scholar is going to be able to get that close up to a manuscript of that size and that level of imaging? Even if you see the original, right? There is no way. And if we add to that, the ability to create annotations and share your in real time, share work across the globe, that is something that is not only easier, that is something that is better. So, it's probably too early to tell, but I think what we are facing here, as far as I can tell, is a real game changer in the field of scholarship. That's just my opinion. Okay, so what is IIIF, the International Interoperability Image Framework? It is a method for delivery of assets, not storage, integration with your DAM software. I'm sorry, this is not the right. Okay, so this is kind of the community, or part of it at least. They're a friendly bunch. They're very eager to help, and I'll talk about that. So this was last Friday in Rome. So IIIF has, as you can see, over 335 million images on the internet, coming from all these nice pins on the globe. Has 40 founding consortium members, out of which I believe 4 are Rosetta customers, and over 100 participating institutions, which include a few more Rosetta customers. I think they're accepting founding members until the end of this year, so if you are interested, you can contact them. Now, IIIF does not define its method. It's a method for delivery of assets. So they are agnostic to the repository that's being used, the storage that's being used. That is completely besides the point, which is not to say they're not thrilled to have all Rosetta and Alma, by the way, customers join the community, but it just means that it's interoperable with any asset management systems. So what were the guidelines that we used coming when going to implement this into Rosetta? First of all, obviously, we looked at the IIIF standards and recommendations, and one of the things here that was important to us is the URLs. The IIIF recommends some standard URLs that are not the same as Rosetta delivery URLs. So we wanted to make sure that those are implemented as well, so that we are actually interoperable with other clients. Starting with the basics. So like I said, there are 2 core APIs. There are other APIs which are in much earlier states of development. So we started with the image and the presentation APIs, and other APIs that have to do with authentication and search, and later on discovery. We'll be looking at those in the future. Also, the manifest is a pretty big specification, the presentation, right? So we didn't implement every single thing. So Teresa talked about collections. We don't have collections yet, but again, this is something we'll look into. I have a different slide on that. Single record management is essential. So we're talking about, we're keeping the IE, we're keeping all the metadata in the IE, and we're not, and we don't want you to have to maintain manifests separately. which means basically we create them on the fly when they're needed. No data migration. So the idea is that everybody that installs Rosetta 5.3 does not need to touch their data in order to make it IIIF compliant. Turnkey solutions means that all the components that are required for things to work with IIIF, and we'll talk about them in a second, although Adi already did, will already be installed with Rosetta 5.3. You won't need to install anything on your own or maintain it on your own. We wanted it to be customizable and extendable for two reasons. First of all, we've already, like I said, we already have several Rosetta customers who have implemented their own external solutions. And while we wanted a solution that is turnkey and you can just plug it in, turn it on and go on day one, we wanted all the customers that already have solutions to be eventually to be able to shut them off. So if there's anything that they are currently doing that out of the box we don't do, we want it to be relatively easy to for them to be able to do that. So the whole transformation of the IE to a IIIF manifest is done by XSL. The XSL is open. It is per institution. So you can decide for each institution if you want to add anything or customize it. Integration with Rosetta delivery is, again, is an essential guideline. So we want not only to be able to take manifests and put them in other viewers, we want to be able to users to be able to use IIIF compliant viewers as Rosetta viewers. So you can plug them in as Rosetta viewers, and just using the standard Rosetta delivery infrastructure serve IIIF images. Finally, performance obviously is a concern. So since we're talking about relatively large images, and so it was important for us to, well, it's not finally. It was important for us to have, to use caching and to make sure that, and we're still running, our developers, as we speak, are running large performance tests to make sure that end users will not only see very excellent images, they will also see them relatively fast. That's finally making sure that access rights are protected. Like that we heard this morning that this afternoon that perhaps a web archive viewer kind of circumvents access rights. Here we wanted to make sure that that does not happen, that your images are protected as you'd expect. A few digital preservation aspects. So like we said, basically we're talking about delivery, so there is not much to be thought of in terms of digital preservation. However, one aspect is the whole question of derivatives, which is kind of a thorny issue in Rosetta. Those of you who are not unfamiliar, derivative copies, there are tools for generating derivative copies. They're treated specially in Rosetta, and they're not preserved. And one of the reasons for that is that from day one we said these are only considered access copies, and there is they're not part of the Rosetta preservation business. However, since preservation images are generally very large, and the end user experience for viewing such large images would be pretty terrible. So there is the whole concept of derivative or access copies. Now that there is an image server which is able to deliver very large images in very good quality very quickly, our hope is that some institutions who are creating derivative copies for this purpose can stop doing so. So had a conversation with Alex Rossetti from the Getty last week, and she thinks that might be, but we'll need to have a conversation on that. Another issue is annotations, and this is a subject for a presentation in itself, but the whole idea of annotations, right? Getting back to Mirador, which I couldn't I couldn't present. When you annotate an image, basically the annotations are stored in your browser storage. And then by clicking a button or something like that, they are exported somewhere. They could be exported down to your desktop. They could be exported to an annotation server. Okay, but the point is that they are not necessarily exported to your preservation system, which means that those, the owner, the institution owning the images will not necessarily have the annotations, but just as bad, perhaps the institution that owns the client and the annotation server, should they want to preserve the annotations, they lose context. And this is a discussion I started having last week in Rome with some colleagues. There was one session on digital preservation by Lucas Rosenthal from Basel. And we discussed this briefly, but we all agree that it's going to be something of a challenge. And I think those in the community who are involved in IIIF, this is something that you might want to be involved in vis-a-vis the IIIF community and see how what kind of solutions we can think of in terms of preserving this. So in terms of our technology stack or something here, I already went through, so I'll just do it quick. We're coming out with the Cantaloupe image server installed on all the delivery servers. And OpenJPEG is also coming out of the box. Those of you who don't like OpenJPEG, maybe it's still a bit too slow still, but have a Kakadu license, you can replace it, talk to us, and we'll walk you through that. As far as clients, IIIF Viewer will deliver a manifest like we told. Universal Viewer will come out of the box as an IE viewer. OpenSeaDragon will come out of the box as a file viewer. You can plug that in, use that in your METS viewer, use that to replace the existing old JPEG viewer and the existing Aware JPEG 2000 viewer. It's pretty nice. I won't have time to show, but if you want to stop by, and I'll show you privately. And Mirador can also be installed as an IE level viewer. So, takeaway, what do you need to do? First of all, you'll need to upgrade to 5.3. Second is use HTTPS. Why? First of all, you need to use HTTPS. I shouldn't have to answer that. Somebody spoke about load balancer, right? You need a load balancer for that. But if you have, if you don't have HTTPS and you have a hosted viewer that is running HTTPS, it obviously won't be able to open your, right? It won't be able to open your manifest, making the whole idea of international interoperability kind of reconfigure delivery rules to use it, try it out, evaluate, talk to us, talk to me, talk to anybody at Ex Libris. We can help if you want to implement. Talk to the Rosetta community, share your experiences. Talk to the IIIF community. They have Google Group, they have Slack. They really like to talk. So tell them that you want. They're eager to have everybody here as institutions. They gave me a whole batch of stickers. I put them over there. If you want them, put them on your computers. And just like what we're looking at for as far as Ex Libris is for the future, collections. Collections is something that is really important. That's like publishing to Europeana will probably be achieved by collections. It's something we need to look at. Discovery, annotations, like I said, search and authentication APIs. And in version 3 of presentation and image presentation APIs, they're already talking about delivering 3D images, audio-visual, like time-based content is going to be really interesting. And as far as we're going to keep our eye open, our ear open, and see where this goes. And of course, based on what you use and based on what they provide, those will be our next steps. So, like I said, anybody wants to see how this actually looks in Rosetta can come and talk to me. Thank you very much.
Have just a short IIIF demo because we couldn't do it yesterday, and then we'll go into the last part of our session today.
Okay, so due to popular demand, and the end of the population will remain undisclosed for now. This is the representation viewer, which came out, I think, in 5.1. I guess you're all familiar with this by now, and we've got just 3 TIFFs here on the side, and you know, the browser cannot render them because they're TIFFs. And I just wanted to show what that will look like with IIIF functionality. So I'm going to add a query string parameter here just to catch the delivery rule. Obviously, this is not, you know, how this will actually work, but just to call the METS viewer, right? And it's right to left because the object happens to be in Hebrew, so you know. So this is the METS viewer, and embedded in it is OpenSeaDragon instead of, you know, what you normally see here, which is the JPEG viewer. So these are OpenSeaDragon controls, and you can zoom in, and I think you know, it's pretty evident that it's a much more compelling experience to the end user. So and this is something you should be able to use right away. I mean, we're not changing anybody's configuration automatically with the service pack, but the viewer will be there, and it's only a question of how, you know, just configuring your file level delivery rules for JPEG, JPEG 2000, TIFF, to use that file viewer rather than the existing ones. So that's if you want to deliver it within the Rosetta viewer. You could also use the universal viewer, and that's already on an IE level. Okay, so the whole thing is, we put this here, but you know, you can put in your own logo, and you can hide it if you want, just to make it, you know, more generic. And here you have on the side, you have the same, of course, the same zoom in functionality. There is, on the sidebar here, you get thumbnails. And if you have a logical struct map, you'll see another tab here, which will represent a tree. And the logical struct map will be translated into what's called sequences in a manifest. So you'll be able, users can navigate from there. There's like a download button here. And it'll offer various resolutions which the image server supports in order to download objects. And there is this share button here. And the share button exposes this IIIF icon, which does not behave uniformly across all platforms yet. This is something that IIIF framework is working on standardizing, but it does work. So you can take this and drag it onto Mirador, which is pretty cool, I think. And then, right, and the same thing here, and this is a different Mirador than I demoed yesterday, so maybe it'll, right, you can use this tool here, right, if you want to crowdsource and, you know, get OCR, capture that, or collaborations between scholars, you can, you know, they can add content here, and if, again, this doesn't exist in Rosetta yet, but eventually when you have annotation servers, this can be captured, and need to discuss what to do with it once it's captured, but it can be shared. So that's, you know, just wanted to give you a visual of this since it's very visual centered, this new feature, and I hope everybody will find it useful and tell us about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Opher. And as we said yesterday, this will be available on the Rosetta server close to your office shortly, like less than 2 months from now.
Will the code be available on GitHub as well?
The code of the
IIIF extensions for
they're planning there?
The code for?
The IIIF extensions available on GitHub, or?
So the code that's involved, there's an XSL file which transforms METS to, that's not on GitHub, that's simply in your environment. Was it? Oh. So I think we'll probably put it, yes, there, just on GitHub, so that you have a vanilla version in case you need to revert back to that. Okay. As far as Mirador is concerned, if that would require a little bit more coding because we need to explain to tell Mirador how to extract the IE and call the manifest. So that we will be posting an example of that. And you can take that and obviously customize it. Is there any other specific code?
Yeah. So you brought that broke sound last week as well from us. So we already implemented the Mirador viewer, but with some customizations. If you would want to use the Mirador viewer and more of the configuration that's shipped with Rosetta right next to these, the question was, could we actually move our customizations into what Ex Libris will ship us? That's the basis of the question.
Okay. So you'd be able obviously to plug in Mirador as an external viewer. So it's just a question of pointing to the right URL. And the coding aspect here is like I said, is passing the correct parameters to Mirador in order to explain it how to pull a manifest out of Rosetta. So I intend to post within the next couple of months before the release an example of how to deploy Mirador, and hopefully that will answer your questions, but we'll talk on it.